Hey, what's going on, Ramley? Welcome to the Ram Skinny here on the LAFB network. We are Los Angeles Sports, and this is your daily dose of Rams news. Week 2 of training camp kicking off as we speak, or I guess this evening. Skinny T will actually be there, so we're recording ahead of Monday night's practice. Wanted to get on here, though, and talk a little bit more news about Matthew Stafford. Everyone has heard by now he was originally seen as missing the first 5 days with some back soreness, 37-year-old, no concern. And then just the end of last week, McVay comes and says, you know what? We're going to go more of a week-to-week approach, have a little bit more caution. The goal is still for him to be ready week 1. So Skinny, that already kind of like raised some red flags. Like, okay, is the soreness more? And then you, my friend, I think this was glazed over by just about everyone. I certainly didn't see it, but you kind of recognized that there is some work we don't know what kind of work is being done, but they're at least consulting and working with a spine specialist, which certainly sounds a little bit more than a sore back. Skinny, just your thoughts on kind of that whole situation.
Yeah, you wonder, there's a lot of components to the back. There's the upper back, there's the lower back, there's the spine, and there's all the muscles back there as well. And all of those, we've heard about, muscle spasms in people's back causing them to miss time. So, I was just kind of curious of where this seems to be affecting him. And, McVay just kind of outs it by saying they're consulting a spine specialist. So it's not muscle work that needs to be done. It's not spasms or anything like that. It's related to the spine, which, Matthew Stafford has had several spine injuries, most recently just back 2022 when he had a spinal contusion that kind of forced him to miss the rest of that season, they kind of shut him down. I don't know, to what extent that injury actually shut him down for the rest of the year. But yeah, it sounds a bit more serious than just an old man with old man back problems.
Yeah. Well, and I think there was the interview with Kay Adams and Sean McVay and talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. And Sean McVay, no matter what, like we'll just say, like he's always going to hype his guys up. I mean, I love him for that. Like he's going to always put his guys in highlight. But he did not mince words when he says Jimmy G's a starter in this league. Like we've got a starter at quarterback as a backup. And maybe I'm reading too much into it, but more so that says like, yeah, this guy might be our starting quarterback if things do not go well. Now, you mentioned the spine specialist, so his name is Dr. Watkins IV. Great name. Dr. Robert Watkins IV, and he is one of the director of Marina Spine Center, and he's worked with just about every LA team, the Rams, the Lakers, the Dodgers, the Clippers, and the Kings. Over 15 other NFL teams have hired him, whether it be for consulting work or actual work with spinal injuries and whatnot. So obviously one of the best. And the fact that he's in your backyard, you're going to use that. But there's certainly something more here if you're going to this kind of lengths. And maybe he's kind of a resident guy that helps with a lot of different teams or not a lot of different players within the team. So again, like I don't want us to like freak anyone out, but I do think we're at the point now where this is certainly more than just 37 years old, a little nagging thing. And Skinny, like, I'm not saying to this severity, but one of the greatest athletes of our time, Tiger Woods, had a back injury years ago and never was the same since. Now, he dealt with other things all through that time period as well. But once he had that back injury, like he could never come back. And golf is a different game, but the back controls so much of your body movements and specifically the spine, just in terms of like walking and standing. So I don't know, man. Like I'm not at the point where I'm like, I don't think Stafford's at risk of like missing the season. I think we know his toughness. I think no matter what, he'll be there week 1. I really do. I don't think it's to that extent of a spine issue. But the question is, how effective is he going to be? And if this is a Super Bowl contending team like we all think, a 70% Matthew Stafford and 80% Matthew Stafford, is that enough to take this team to the promised land? I think that's the bigger question. Now, it's not if he's going to be available. It's how effective he will be when he's on the field, because we know he's tough enough to play through it, and he's going to. And I admire the heck out of him for that. And then I'll toss it back to you. Is a 70, 75, 85% Stafford still better than Jimmy Garoppolo? Or is that the real question? Like, is McVay right where he truly believes Garoppolo's a starter and is better than a 70% Stafford?
There was some interesting Davante Adams quotes when they played together. I was kind of looking into those a little bit, see if there's an article in there. His first padded practice today for the Rams. From what we've seen recently of Jimmy Garoppolo, I would say he is not. Matthew Stafford is the Super Bowl window. He is the Rams' best chance. I firmly believe that. I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo can do. We haven't seen him do what Stafford at his greatest heights can do, and going back to the spinal injury, that's going to affect your off platform, your arm angles, the things that make Stafford truly great. As a pocket passer, is it going to affect his mechanics? We heard about a rib injury late last year. Was that related to the spine? We saw how, that affected his play down the stretch last year, and he gutted it out. He really did. He gutted out those wins and in the playoffs as well. Really gutsy performance from Stafford. There's a lot of questions that come up. Last week we tried to do this and we had some technical issues, so we couldn't put the episode out. But I said, we're going to know a lot more next week. Now we're in next week. We know less. We don't know anymore. There's no clarity on this other than it's worse than they had first anticipated. And as the weeks go away, we were just counting down. We were going over our schedule for the next couple of weeks. Football season's almost here.
Yeah.
September 7th is going to be here fast. And obviously he wasn't going to play in any of those preseason games. That never happens. But you got Coleman Shelton back under there. You've got some new offense you really want to install, the 12 personnel, the 21 personnel, new personnel, just in terms of guys new on the team. Every snap matters, and this is less than ideal. So I'm not going to DEFCON 4. I'm not saying he's missing any part of the season, but you go back a couple years ago, there was an elbow issue. And McVay said, "Oh, it's not a big deal. Just working through something. We got a good plan. He feels good." Stafford, in one of his post-practice interviews, was very dismissive of the media's questions around that elbow issue. He was like, "Hey, you saw me out there. I was flinging the ball around. I looked great, didn't I?" Well, I mean, that elbow injury nagged him all year.
Yeah. And then that but then he ended up having the neck contusion later on in the year where they shut it down once the season was basically lost anyway. It's, anytime McVay says not concerned or working through something, I think everyone's ears perk up like, so it is concerning. So usually when you say it's not concerning and he's just working through something, there's usually something more there. And we've said this a bunch on other shows about, that I'm not concerned about him and his readiness necessarily being the vet that he is, but, there is chemistry, there is timing. You got to get down with Davante Adams, with continuing with Puka Nacua, with Jordan Whittington, who's kind of a rising guy, with some of these rookie receivers that seem to be making an impact early on with Jimmy Garoppolo and Stetson Bennett. And as you mentioned, the offensive line that is kind of shuffling. So the one kind of bright spot, Skinny, is this Rams team's the last 2 years has started off horrifically and made the playoffs both years. So if there's any team that can have kind of some question marks and some slow starts, it is this Rams team, because they seem to be able to turn it on in the second half of the year and did that. Now, you don't want to do that to yourself every single year because obviously there's so much thin margin for error, and depending how the schedule shakes out and how teams end up coming on late in the season, you can't rely on that. But history has shown us over the last 2 years that starting whatever it was, 0-4 and 1-5 or 2-6 or whatever, didn't have that huge of effect as they made a run late. So if this does linger and the Rams do need to kind of keep him out longer, if they do have a slow start, say 2-3, 1-3, 1-4, and he's then fully 100% healthy when he comes back, you have confidence that they can get things turned around. But certainly not ideal. And a back, like leg issue, knee, some of those are like, okay, that's not good, but you'll come back from that. Like back is just one of those things, especially when you're older. I mean, it just lingers, man. And it affects everything, every part of your body it affects, obviously.
Yeah, and we saw last year his mobility was really limited. He only had 3 official scrambles last year, which is, a small amount.
Not much.
and didn't look great when he was outside of the pocket, trying to create with his legs. And that's just an element of football. That's part of modern football. It has to be there. And the Rams aren't going to have that. We saw that from last year. It's not going to get better this year. So, I mean, I don't want to ring any alarm bells yet, but this is what they signed up for. When they re-signed Stafford, when they didn't draft anybody else, when they didn't, I mean, they have a lot of belief in Jimmy Garoppolo. I love that they have a lot of belief in him. I'm not on board. But this is what they signed up for. This is the boat they're in, paddling up the river. So, and it's just going to be a concern. It's going to have, injury was always going to be top of concern with Matthew Stafford. He's going to get hit some. And that's just where we are.
Well, and with this, and we don't have to say names yet, because we'll dive into this if this actually, I don't want this to seem like we believe it's a foregone conclusion, because I do, like I said, I think he will start week 1. It's just a matter of what level. So we know the Rams at this point, their plan is like, okay, most likely next year draft the future. They got the 2 first-round picks. There's been all the Arch Manning rumors, which I don't think even comes out in next year's draft. But anyway, there's all those rumors we'll talk about much later. If this season starts to go awry, whether that's Stafford actually just being out because this thing lingers, or just his level of play is dropped off. Because again, I mean, he's going to be 38 during the season. I think December, is his birthday. He turns 38. And so there was potential for drop off anyway, just based on age. Now you throw in a spine situation, back injury. Do you think the Rams, if they see this as a Super Bowl window, which I know the Rams believe they're always in a Super Bowl window, but hey, they don't just grow on trees. There's certain teams that are more fit than others. Do they get aggressive at some point before the trade deadline and go after a quarterback that could be like disposable from another team? Now, I know we're thinking way what ifs, but this is a what if that could actually come to fruition, maybe. Hopefully not. Hopefully everything's good. Stafford's all gravy. It's just they're being extremely cautious, but in reality, he's going to be totally fine. Hopefully that's the case. But if not, do you think they need to be aggressive and kind of throw the plan out the window?
I'm going to stick with my original catchphrase, which Stafford is the Super Bowl window. I don't think there's a guy out there, unless something goes super south with Joe Burrow, which that name just keeps rattling around in my head. As he gets super pissed with the Bengals, it's not going to happen. But crazy things happen. Dak Prescott has a weird situation. There's not a starting quarterback right now that you can look at and go like, oh yeah, if they just wanted to get aggressive and go after him, they could land a guy. Unless I'm not thinking of somebody. There's a whole bunch of quarterbacks in Cleveland. Go get Joe Flacco.
Yeah,
is he in Cleveland? Sounds right.
Yeah, there's a bunch there. Yeah, I just think with their 2 first-round picks, like if they feel like this year is the year, like they could go. There's teams that would part with. I'm not saying like the Justin Herberts, or you joke about the Joe Burrows or Bo Nix or Patrick, like none of those. But I think there's some names out there of guys that are kind of like those 1 to 2 year guys that teams are feeling out. So I don't want to get there.
Do you have any names do you have any names in your head that are in that kind of category?
Well, I think, what's hard, I think there's 2 very real names, but they're in division. And so you're not going to trade in division. I think both Kyler Murray and Sam Darnold up in Seattle, they're both kind of in situations where I know Kyler Murray's more deemed as the future guy. Sam Darnold was just given like a short contract. They drafted Jalen Milroe. But I think both those guys are guys that the team could be like, yeah, we could go for a fresh start. And if we can get a first-round pick out of it, like obviously Sam Darnold's not going to take 2 first-round picks. But unfortunately, in division, I feel like that's very unlikely to happen. When you look around the league, like obviously we talked Kirk Cousins is still sitting there. He's going to be a backup. Kirk Cousins is going to be a backup. And he's like, why would the Falcons say no to something? Again, you could probably get him for non-first-round pick, and it doesn't throw away your plan next year of potentially drafting for the future, but you can get Kirk Cousins in here, veteran. You don't even have to like get rid of Stafford. Like it just depends on what his health is like. And at least Kirk Cousins can come and play some football instead of holding a clipboard behind Michael Penix. So that one's intriguing. Hopefully we don't get to that point, but it's just, anything with the back, man, you start getting Tiger Woods vibe. Like it's just never going to be the same.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough one, and he's coming off several weeks of not doing anything, not playing much football, and he comes in with a back injury. This is a terrible way to start training camp.
Yeah. So, well, Skinny T will be there tonight. So we're going to get this out right away. He'll be there tonight. It's a nice late evening practice. I say late evening. I mean, it's 4 to 6, but late afternoon, early evening practice. So plenty of camp reports coming from Skinny. So keep it right here at the LAFB Network, the Rams LAFB YouTube channel. Or if you prefer audio, you can just search for Rams Skinny. That's Skinny T. I'm Ryan Dyer. Let us know your guys' thoughts on the Stafford situation. Love it if you comment below. You can head to LAFB Network and check out our discussion board there, as we can kind of chat about if there should be concern, or hey, if this is just the Rams being extra cautious and everything will be all good for week 1. Let us know your thoughts. Talk to you all soon. This is the Rams Skinny here on the LAFB Network.